G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome to my first impressions and analysis of the new skill in patch 1.0.3 for Path of Exile, Barrage. As you can see, this skill works both with bows and wands. It's a new projectile attack skill, and it looked pretty hilarious with wands, I'm not gonna lie. I think it's going to be a very popular wander skill as well, so we should see quite a few people casting attacks like this. Pretty awesome stuff, but it looks pretty sick with a bow. And I think the skill has some potential, It's not going to be, I think, a new, like, overtaking lightning arrow or anything like that as a new staple bow skill, but I think there'll be some niche builds created around it, and I think it will be incorporated into some other builds, either as kind of a makeshift AoE ability, or a pretty decent single target-ish sort of ability. So let's talk about the basic mechanics of the skill. I'll bring this back over here and we'll take a look at the tooltips here. It is tagged as an attack and a bow skill. So obviously it's just an attack if you put it in a wand, or it's a bow skill if you put it in a bow. Now it's not tagged as a projectile, but it is actually a projectile, so anything that modifies projectiles will work on it. However, they don't always work as expected. Let's take a look at the way the skill works for some of the basics, and then we'll take a little bit more a look at some of the interactions with the different support gems and things like that. So, when you fire a barrage, you fire off, I believe it's 4, we get 3 additional projectiles. So we fire off 4 projectiles in rapid succession. It's kind of like, you know, straight from Diablo 2 basically. So we fire this off, and this obviously, as I said, works the same with a bow or a wand, as long as I have it equipped properly. Now, you'll notice at the point of origin, all the bows are kind of clustered together. However, as it spreads out, you know, your target is kind of changing around. It's randomly picked within sort of a small cone based on where you aim. So if I am over here, it's going to be a small cone in this area here, something like that. And it's going to be random each time. You'll see it changes each time. Now this is significant because if you're attacking an enemy from close range, you're going to shotgun all of the attacks into them, and obviously you'll do a lot more damage to that single target that way. However, if you're firing from a range, so if I kind of move back here a little bit, let's move below so I can get this guy at the edge of my screen there. You'll notice that, you know, some of the arrows are actually going to miss. Not always, it's a pretty narrow cone, but sometimes they're actually going to miss. So let's actually get these guys up here. I'm probably going to hit both of these guys here doing this like this. You'll see sometimes I hit the left guy, sometimes I'm hitting the right guy. So it can be kind of used as a bit of an AoE skill in that way. But if you do want to use it as a single target skill, you're probably going to get a little bit closer so that you're actually hitting them with all the projectiles. You know, it works like a shotgun in every sense of the word. You can actually hit them with all of the projectiles if you get up nice and close. So, kind of a rapid fire spraying ability, has some interesting potential there, but let's take a look at the rest of the description and stuff here, and then we'll take a look at some of the support gem interactions. Now, the leveling the skill gives increased physical damage. I leveled it up 1 level and I got 4% increased physical damage. Now this might scale differently, but that gives you an idea of how much this is going to increase. It's pretty much the same with most attacks where you get increased physical. However, quality on the skill gem, per 2 points of quality, you get 1 increased projectile damage. So if you're going for an elemental build like this, which since I'm using a Storm Cloud for testing this, it's a pure elemental. The projectile damage from quality is going to affect that, and that looks to be a maximum of 10 increased projectile damage there. Now, fires 3 different additional projectiles. That means it fires 4 projectiles in rapid succession. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the future because that's pretty significant. But deals 40% of base damage. That's a huge damage reduction. Basically, you know, you're firing 4 arrows, so overall your damage is going to be slightly higher than 100% of your normal damage if you're just using your basic default attack. But each individual arrow deals significantly less damage. It's a pretty big damage reduction, so you kind of need to keep that in mind depending on how you want to build your character. 33% less increased attack speed as well. However, attack speed kind of works a little bit weirdly with Barrage. We can actually show this with the faster attack support gem. So let's just we get this kind of rhythm. Now you'll notice that there's also a little build up before Barrage actually fires. So I click, and there's a slight delay there before it actually fires. This is actually written down in the description as well. After a short preparation time, you attack repeatedly with a ranged weapon. So that's pretty interesting that it's written in there. Now, putting faster attacks in there, it's actually kind of hard to get a sense exactly of what it does. You can tell, overall, it's definitely faster, but it doesn't. I don't think it seems to increase the speed at which you fire those individual arrows. Like if we fire this, I'm still firing those super quickly. I don't think that's increasing so much. So I'm getting the sense that mostly it's decreasing the delay between barrages. So I'm thinking a very high attack speed build. You know, this is a very good example of high attack speed here. I'm using faster attack, sure, it's only a little one, but I'm on a Storm Cloud, which has 1.77 attack speed. So I have like, you know, at least 2 attacks per second here, quite a bit. And that's kind of what you're looking at there for increased attack speed with this sort of skill there. Now I can actually show off a bit slower because my wand here only has 1.3 attacks per second. And you can kind of see how that goes. Interesting. I haven't quite yet determined how attack speed affects it, but attack speed is obviously going to be a bit of an increase. We can obviously see the DPS increase there from that, but I don't know. I don't know how attack speed is going to be used in this sort of skill, so that's going to require a little bit more testing. Maybe you guys can play around with that a bit. Okay. So now let's talk about something that I find super interesting with this skill. If we use LMP or GMP with this skill, it doesn't do what it normally does with, say, a normal attack. Like say we use Lightning Arrow, we use LMP, we fire out 3 arrows in an arc that we can kind of control. However, with Barrage, what it does is just adds 3 arrows to the barrage of attacks. So this happens over the same duration. However, we fire now 3 additional arrows, so you turn it into like full machine gun mode there. With GMP, obviously, we're going to fire extra arrows again, so you're going to get more arrows in that same space of time. So obviously, you can combine that with faster attacks and be putting out simply a lot more arrows. But obviously, it's weird. Usually you put LMP in a skill to make it a better sort of AoE ability. However, with this, it's actually going to make it a better single target ability. Although you're getting a damage reduction from LMP as well, you're firing additional projectiles, still again an overall increase in damage done if you can get all of those attacks to connect. So going up to single target with a mob here, let's go find a mob and see how it works here. I am using a level 10 bow, although it's a pretty powerful level 10 bow in a level 18 or so area, so we're pretty appropriate in terms of damage. And you can kind of see how that works there. I'm able to shotgun this guy with all of those attacks there, and I don't know, it seems like it has some pretty good potential. I'm interested to see, GMP might actually be pretty effective with this skill. Generally, the damage reduction on GMP is too great because you're not hitting mobs with all of the projectiles. However, if you're going to use this as a single target with GMP, I actually think this could work as an overall damage buff. So I think GMP works pretty well with this, but I don't have a GMP to test, unfortunately. Now, PS obviously is going to force those projectiles to pierce, and Fork is going to force them to fork as per normal. I think Chain has a fair bit of potential because the amount of projectiles you're putting out. If you do want to turn Barrage into an AoE skill, I think that's the best way of doing it. There's no real way of increasing the firing cone. You can put Fork, for example, and have it fork out a little bit once it actually hits something, but Fork's a little bit, not too impressive as an AoE skill. Pierce, of course, is still going to keep you in that same sort of cone, so even if I shoot at this range and pierce, it's still going to keep going in the same cone. It's not really going to increase my AoE potential there. So it's at best an average AoE skill. However, with Chain, let's go find a larger pack here. We can use Chain to actually take advantage of the amount of arrows we're firing to turn it into, a somewhat decent AoE ability. Now, if we're adding in something like maybe if we're adding in GMP or LMP there, we're going to fire more arrows. We're going to get more chaining arrows. I think that has some potential. Mostly, I'm seeing this as a kind of like a half and half AoE ability that also would work pretty well as single target. So interesting to see how that works out there. But Point Blank, I think, is another support that has potential with this. As I said, if you get close, you're able to take better advantage of the fact that you're going to be hitting them with pretty much all of the projectiles. You'll see I'll very rarely miss when I'm that close to the mob. And Point Blank means you're going to take advantage of the fact that you're close anyway. You're going to be dealing more damage as well from the Point Blank effect there. So you could do that with the support gem, or you could do that with the passive keystone, depending on how you wanted to also do the build. You could also use something like, I think it's Chin Sol, the unique bow that also gives you a Point Blank effect there. So I think Point Blank does have a fair bit of potential with it, and if you're adding in maybe LMP or GMP as well, getting more arrows out, getting more Point Blank action there, I think that does have some potential. The reduction in attack speed doesn't seem too harmful for it, but again, I'm not entirely sure of the significance of attack speed with this skill. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with Barrage. I think it seems like a fun sort of skill. It's going to be one that we can add in kind of as a single target ability, and I'd be interested to see what people do with it as an AoE skill as well, linking it with Chain and things like that. Maybe we'll see some interesting attacks builds around it, people changing their passive trees and stuff around it, but not too just sure yet what's going to happen with it. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below, but those are my first impressions for the Barrage skill. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching. Oh yeah, and it's pretty cool on ranged attack totem too. Yeah.